The Underground, written by Oliver Arnold, narrated by Adam Elevenloves. Episode 4 from the series, Notes from the Ahead.
I know you haven't heard from me in a while. I've been busy, and in hiding. They are on to me, and I do not have the leisure to sit and write. Excuse the grammar. It is troublesome to work in the dark, but I must not raise the lights. My plea for help has been posted. Through magazines, newspapers, and even online, I've asked the Ahead for help, hoping that my calls would endure the test of time. And behold, never would I have dreamed of playing such a pivotal role in Earth's fate. Life is meaningful again. I am tense as my every step bears immense consequence. The news announced that dramatic change will overcome the world. This is true, but I mustn't reveal myself just yet. The timeline's burden rests on my shoulders. For now, I have received for you another transmission. This latest report on future transportation reached me while chewing bread.
Beginning of transcription. Dear Post, not without pride do I report the events that became my last, and by far most outrageous, transportation adventure. I had settled well into life as a school bus driver and into the vehicle itself, which had become my office as well as my home. Moving into the bus eased my terrible homesickness, as its narrow, elongated shape, the overhead handrails, and the cramped, claustrophobic space reminded me of my beloved space station. It helped that I had glued glowing star decals from promotional dish soap bottles all across the windows. The kids, too, have been great. We've learned so much from each other. One day, a student brought a caged hamster to our ride. The little being was busy running its wheel, and the kids joked about the futility of it. I sympathized with the creature, as I, on the space station, had sprinted many miles in such implements and found nothing worthless about them. These episodes were all great fun and educational, and I was on my way to becoming a full earther. But my life and fortunes were about to change once more. One morning, I had just added the third layer of onions to my worst and onion sandwich when the superintendent rushed into the bus's lavatory, my kitchen. "Fire up the mega drive!" he shouted. "The city's gonna reroute the happy hypertubes, and I want all the kids to witness it." "Hypertubes?" I asked without interest. The superintendent stared at me blankly. "You're new around here, I forgot," he then added. "Those glass extrusions out there," he pointed at the omnipresent transparent tubes crisscrossing the city, "have been eyesores for a long time. But that changes today. The mayor has decided to drain them into the subway lines." I nodded. How and why this was exciting, I did not know at the time. I was unfamiliar with the tubes or their history and was surprised that anyone would bother field tripping there. But being the always reliable driver, I quickly collected my laundry from the bus's rear, emptied the potty bucket, and before I knew it, the children streamed in and we took off. A half hour later, we reached our destination, the main hub for the hypertubes, which were also known as funsportation. Advertisements presented them as exhilarating rides where passengers shot through transparent pipes, much like in a water park, all the while having a blast. The tubes were often installed in exposed locations, spiraling around buildings, not out of necessity but for the eye's delight. In the ads, folks young and old dashed through them, not simply to go from A to B but to have a good time. The ads presented colorful conduits and twisted candy canes with happy and brightly colored passengers rushing through. I stared at the actual tubes. They were brown. Had they been painted to mimic trees? I squinted but could not distinguish any riders. Rather, a sort of dark substance moved through them, advancing intermittently, much like matter passing through a digestive system. I had no trouble finding the main station, as the place was marked by a monumental silver tower, a clever way to make the station easy to find in a city of sky-high buildings. For the festivities, it was hung with decorations, and bleachers had been erected, although I could not make out any guests. We were the first to arrive. I brought the children to the meeting point. We waited. No one presented themselves, and lacking any direction as well as getting bored, I walked toward the station. It bore no obvious entrance presented other than one roundish door that sported an enormous turning wheel. Thinking of it as perhaps the same kind of hatch the space station would have, I began turning it. A dive siren activated, and I giddily rotated the hoop faster when a wildly waving man in an overall appeared. "Crap! Crap!" he shouted, running toward me. "What is it, good man?" No need to curse, I replied, cheerfully turning the mechanism more. Fool, he screamed, breathing through his mouth. It's waste! Waste? A waste of time? A wasted effort? I didn't follow. Easing my grip, I let the huffing man arrive. The tubes are sewers, he exclaimed. Only then did I see the sign. Happy Hypertubes, now operated by the Ordure Authority. Instead of excitement, I had found excrement. You from behind the moon? The man asked with great bewilderment. In front of the moon, I replied, pointing my pinky up at the space station in a fine and esteemed manner. But heavens, why is this sewage? I asked, as I was contractually obligated by the school to feign interest during excursions. The tubes were built by aliens, the custodian then said. Aliens built Earth's tubular transport systems? I asked, as this was unusual. Yeah, and cheaply, too. They submitted a competitive bid to build all these tubes and underground tunnels. Our government couldn't say no. The creatures utilized technology way beyond our means. I nodded. There was something fishy about the whole situation, though, the keeper continued, now lowering his voice conspiratorially. The extraterrestrials would only communicate via email, never revealing their appearance, not even in video calls. Also, no one had ever heard of their world named Burrow 9. I nodded more. Government agents did some research and found that they're an underground, subdwelling race. Officials feared that this was, in fact, a silent invasion. I nodded strongly. Just when the military moved to chase them off, they vanished. Neither tunnels nor tubes were finished. Some say the aliens are still on this planet. Unusable tunnels? A pipe dream, I added. My wit was enormous. It must have been the onions. But only since mankind is now all about information flow, all other flows are neglected, the man said, complaining. Thus, city officials decided to use the tubes for crap rather than people, and their crap. But why don't we finish the subway tunnels then? Now the custodian's face darkened and his voice began to tremble. Because some say they're haunted. People hear noises down there, strange noises, ungodly noises. They hear things moving down in the dark. He pulled up his pants. I remembered my wife's warning about all the ugly things in the soil and gulped. After that entertaining introduction, the man droned on and on. I had a hard time paying attention, and also it was time for my nap. Yet without driving a vehicle, snoozing would look suspicious. Luckily, I noticed a few rowdy kids had snuck off. I used the opportunity to detach myself from the man's rambling. The kids had encircled a boy holding a contraption of a squid-like shape, metallic, round, with multiple extrusions that looked like tentacles or bendy legs. This spidery appearance made me recall my hospital misadventure. I shuddered. I dug this up at my grandpa's junkyard, said the boy, presenting the device. It was like half buried. Who knows for how long? The junkyard's right over there. The kid pointed to an area about 400 meters off. This thing made my fluter scooter 10 times as fast. I called the kid out on his ridiculous claim. Did it now? And how? The boy remained steadfast. It's alien tech. It crawls into a machine to fix it. Now this surprised me. It sounded a lot like intelligent alien mechanisms I had seen on the station. A multifunctional part that proactively determined where in a system it belonged, and then attached itself to that location autonomously. Object-oriented design, this was called. Very handy technology for fixing broken spacecraft in outer space indeed. But what was it doing down here? Let's test it on something, one kid suggested. As the only adult, I had the best idea. Let's try it on the bus. The boy opened his hand. The spidery thing's core started pulsing as if it were scanning its surroundings. Then its arms sprung to life, wiggling and probing, causing the kid to drop it. The little machine hit the ground and spun a few times. Surely it had gone mad. Suddenly it rushed toward the rear of the bus and vanished underneath the cowl. The kids exchanged glances. I shrugged. Quiet drilling and grinding noises emitted from where it had vanished, and I became worried that it was ruining our ride. The kids shared my concern. Move the bus to shake it out, one student suggested. A great idea from a smart kid. I got in, started the reactor, and cautiously added thrust. The vehicle muttered and sputtered, and I began to think that the dang alien tech might have damaged my bus rather than enhanced it. But suddenly the sputter ceased, and the bus idled normally. But then, without warning, the vehicle shot forward and accelerated beyond anything I had thought the old tub was capable of. I had trouble steering, not only due to the vehicle's speed, but also because my fear-stiffened arms refused to work. I struck both disc and air brakes without effect. The children were already out of sight, and we were still speeding up. Whether my mind or the bus raced faster, I do not know. I had by now navigated multiple bends. The bus's reactor would last for another 50,000 years, and I could not imagine steering the vehicle for that long. Dang alien tech. It had clearly modded the bus and was now accelerating the thing as it would have done with some spaceship traveling from Alpha Centauri to Schleswig-Holstein. I realized I did not know this area or the route. Worse, we had entered a less developed section, where roads and buildings became sparse. I steered off the road and into the sand to slow us. It wasn't enough. Despite my best efforts, I lost control. The vehicle shot into a curb and veered sideways, thrusting me out of my seat and into the unknown. I woke in complete darkness and absolute silence. My instincts urged me to remain still and not arouse interest from anyone or anything. After orienting myself, I began to cautiously feel out the environment around me. It was impossible to guess the time of day or how long I'd been out. My working assumption was that the crashing bus had tossed me into one of the abandoned subway stations and somehow down a shaft into the deserted, haunted tunnels. Damn that alien mod. My expectations for recovery were low. "Hello?" I gingerly asked into the dark but received no answer. Surely by now the kids had alerted the authorities. There was no way the youths would cover their tracks. After all, without the school bus, how would anyone get home? But what if the alien device had dislodged from the vehicle and mended the damaged building? Whether the machine included such functionality, I knew not. I spent the next half hour theorizing about what could have transpired, yet repeatedly reaching the same conclusion. Curse all alien tech. That's when I noticed the glow. It came from the ground just a few meters ahead, pulsing calmly. I crawled forward and ran my hand across it. It was the alien implement. The thing had somehow been thrust or crawled down here with me, and was now, well, shining a helping light. With its glow guiding me, I located my backpack and decided, hatred or not, to bring the thing along. I illuminated the rucksacks inside for anything helpful. For one, there was the plastic baby. That'll be handy down here. I thought and imagined subterranean situations that could require a bogus baby, such as sudden train movements, a mad mother, and my lonely, crazed mind demanding companionship. Or perhaps I would melt the thing down for its resources or distill the fumes into acid to dissolve an impassable door lock or some such. Things and people often go crazy in dark tunnels. "Mama!" The baby had shifted. Or had it? If only there was a switch for data, I reflected and loathed myself for contemplating such trivialities under these serious circumstances. I decided to bring everything that was in it. Who knew what troubles lay ahead? Crawling onward and around a corner, I sensed a wider, less oppressive space opening up ahead, and there they were. I at once sensed a heavy intent bearing down on me. 2 red, glowing dots. On the scale of scary glowy dot sightings, pairs of 2 are less upsetting than, say, groupings of 6. A single dot could have been a device or laser, perhaps. 3 to 6, mechanized spider beast. Anything over 6, some sort of computer console. These 2, at about the height of a person, signified an androic life form. The dots slowly turned, like a lighthouse scanning the dark. The alien implement began to twitch. I desperately tried to subdue it. The mechanical noise, though subtle, was deafening in this silence. The glowing dots, meanwhile, accelerated their rotation and then came to a stop right upon me. I froze. But suddenly, the ambient lights all around me activated, and I found myself lying wide in the open of an underground train station with no cover nearby. I had been right, though. The glowing dots belonged to an android dressed in overalls. "Hello?" I croaked feebly. "Anomaly detected!" The humanoid figure suddenly droned, activating pain inducers. I jerked back, dropping the baby on its head, but the humanoid began to laugh. "Got you there, partner." It took a step toward me and deactivated its scanners. I'm not deadly, though my creators have claimed that I am 10% killbot. "Right. I said with a forced smile. And where are your creators now?
I killed them.
Ah. I laughed uneasily, searching the surrounding debris for a weapon. If this machine was kidding, it couldn't be crazy. Can you be crazy and funny? Surely this automaton was lying, insane, or both.
How may I assist?
The man-machine asked. I was in no mood to trust this spooky, malfunctioning mandroid, but my options were limited. Have you gone mad? I asked the machine outright, as androids are programmed to speak the truth. No, it replied. Would anything gone mad even know it?
I was made mad,
it added ambiguously. Looking over its edgy but not unpleasant features, I just now noticed the uniform it wore, embroidered with the logo of the Transport Authority. How many of you are down here? I asked.
N-A-N,
the thing answered. Yes, where am I? You are here. It shone a laser dot on the ground. What is here? I clutched a rock. Station X. Had this bot been a rejected model, unsuitable as a nanny or butler, sent down here for eternal shadow duty? I need to get out of here, I cautiously indicated. Naturally, sir. Present your token. I don't have one. Once again, it raised its arms. Prepare for destruction. I stopped and hastily pulled a button from my pocket. Found it. I tossed the machine the worthless disk. Token accepted, the droid droned to my surprise. Deposit luggage. It pointed at a jagged hole in the ground that looked much like a cave-in. I gawked at the yawning opening. Won't my stuff break if I toss it down there? Definitely, the android attendant replied, spitting down the hole. Everything breaks down here. We left it at that, and I dumped my bag and baby down the black pit. Mama! The plastic infant cried as it vanished into the depths. And now you, commanded the automaton. Madness. The machine was absolutely insane. When it took a threatening step forward, I lowered myself into the hollow. Fortunately, a pile of old luggage and clothing cushioned my fall. Where were the owners of all this stuff? I picked up my backpack and was joined by the android, who came strolling down a ramp not far off. It was all so senseless. Why did I follow its commands? Did it possess lethal powers? Were its arms charged and functional? What did I know about androids? They were built with superhuman strength, redundant systems, vast knowledge, and intelligence. I eyed my specimen and wondered whether it had been abandoned because it was lacking those things. Noticing my stares, it gestured me forward. It was very dark down here, but metallic tracks on the ground indicated we were in an actual train tunnel. Good thing they were inactive. I followed the attendant silently. We didn't just walk straight. That much I could tell. At times we veered through openings in the wall, perhaps to cross over into other tunnels. I felt even more lost than before. All the while, a quiet, periodic rasping emitted from my oppressor. It didn't sound like it had anything to do with its operation. After listening intently, I realized the android was making choo-choo sounds with its mouth. I had to destroy it, or stage an escape. Bolting through the dark tunnels seemed impossible. The android likely knew the area well and could see in the dark, while I'd crash into some concrete barrier right away. I grew desperate. Just then, the situation changed dramatically. A light rose in the darkness ahead. Was my mind signaling an upcoming idea? No, I blinked hard, and it remained there, dancing lightly through the air. Someone's flashlight. It didn't move enough to belong to a laborer or even a walking person. It also floated rather high up in the air. Moving or not, light equals life equals help, and help equals hope. The android appeared not to see, or ignored, the light. It was now or never. Hello? I shouted out of desperation. No reply came, but the light source now began to sway. Help, please! The glowing apparition, still some ways off, now vanished periodically, only increasing my desire to get to it as fast as possible. When it suddenly vanished, I panicked. I stumbled forward, falling on my hands and knees, tearing my uniform and scraping my skin. But I didn't care. Help was near. The android, all the while appearing alarmed, held me back, pushed me down, and yet advanced itself. Clearly it sensed my impending rescue and strove to prevent it. Still down, I sensed something brushing my arm, and the light reappeared right in front of us. I rose. "Please help me. A crazy android holds me hostage," I yelled, not caring that the man-machine could hear me. The humanoid pushed me back down. "Mama!" cried the baby, and then it happened. A stench hit me with the rush of air from something big moving fast, and I felt a tremendous force slamming down right in front of me. I stayed low, and after regaining my wits, I brought up the glowing alien device. In its light, I saw the terrible maw of a Mercurian angler. These immobile aliens often grew in the dark, luring prey toward them with lights or sounds. How it found its way down here, I'll never know, although they often hitch rides on people's ships. The beast had picked up the android by the head, swinging it violently while making all sorts of smacking sounds, only to spit the rubberized human fabrication out onto the tracks, sans head. The monster's terrible eating sounds now changed into huffing and choking. Then suddenly, after one hard, labored cough, the plant-like creature shriveled up and died. I stared at the lifeless, shredded humanoid. A terrible thought overcame me. Had it been trying to save me? This whole time, was the awkward man-machine attempting to lead me out of the tunnels? I glanced back at the sad, contorted pile of polystyrene plastics, but felt no pity. I had passed one hurdle, but was even deeper into my prison. Now alone, in near-complete darkness, without guide or map, and potentially hundreds of anglers down here, perhaps even other, scarier things. Regardless, there had to be other stations along this line, finished or not, and I had to reach one. After plodding down black tunnels for what felt like hours, I began losing faith. The hope of finding stations was as dim as the tunnel's illumination. My knees ached from the uneven surface, and more than once, I felt the urge to float over it all, space station style. Disagreeable thoughts drifted through my head. What if this route was a dead end? What if I fell into a shaft? What if an army of androids awaited me ahead? A return to the first station became more attractive by the minute. If only I had memorized the way. Without the pesky android, I could search for a way up. But then again, why had the artificial human led me down this route to begin with? I noticed a light ahead. Great. I was just about done with glowing dots and halos. This one wasn't an alien angler, though, that I was sure of. The illumination in front of me came from a broad source, perhaps multiple lamps to brighten a room. But who kept a space alight in these abandoned tunnels? A madman? A wizard? The devil himself? Or perhaps this was a service station with a ladder leading up. Despite a pressing unease, I pushed onward. When I reached a rather cavernous and well-lit opening to the side of the main tunnel, I slowly peeked around the corner, careful not to fall for another trap. The sizable room featured a tall, unfinished ceiling and walls with numerous man-sized holes across them. At the center, poking through the ceiling, loomed a giant riveted cylinder that resembled the station's tower I had seen earlier above ground. This had to be its base. Along the walls lay a workspace complete with tools, workbenches, and machines, though all of them were of unfamiliar shape and size. One peculiar feature these implements shared were the slings connected to them, reminiscent of old-time attachments for cattle. Odd, but then I knew nothing about tunnel construction or train maintenance. Had this space been abandoned mid-construction? Was I hallucinating from tube gas? No person was visible. There were no sounds or movements. I dared venture into the room further. Schlob, schlib, schlob, schlib. My every step produced a noise, and I noticed that a thick, gooey substance covered the floor. A mineral leak could explain this, or slimy algae. Perhaps this was glue or an epoxy spill. I wanted to contemplate and explore more soothing conclusions to this vexing find, but was thrust from my musings by a chafing from the tunnel. Krilch, krolch, krilch, krolch. It sounded like someone relentlessly squeezing a giant, lard-filled balloon. Reflexively, I hid behind a workbench. It's an approaching train. Perhaps the same one dumping all the glue, I thought, soothing myself. But surely you've guessed that I wouldn't have billed this as my most exciting transportation narrative had it all been epoxy. The chafing grew louder, followed by huffing and puffing. I feared that fate had spared me from the angler alien, only to sacrifice me to a darker, hungrier beast. I still hoped for a machine, a tool, a vehicle, whatever, to explain this sensory input pragmatically. But nay, what turned the corner were two humongous, slimy worms. I gasped. These had to be the alien conspirators who'd plotted to invade humanity's home planet. My mind raced. These guys could well ring in the end of us all. I could not allow it. I grabbed a plank of wood and jumped out of hiding. Surrender! The aliens didn't. Oh, said one. Are you another adventurer seeking fame and treasure? I'm here to stop you, scumble, I yelled. Who are you calling a ball? The slimy, elongated creature replied, thundering. Challenging a worm's shape was very offensive, as I remembered now. What's your words, earthling? Now it was my turn for anger. Who are you calling an earthling? I retorted. The situation tensed. Okay, I said diffusingly. We all spoke in haste, but I will have it known to be from Space Station Hoke. Are you guys from around here? I asked, though they clearly weren't. The worms exchanged glances. We're from Burrow 9. Right, I said with an air of known this all along. Invading much? No, oh. The bigger of the worms raised its great caterpillar brows. We're looking for a fresh start. But this is our planet, I said. Oh, and it shall remain as such, the alien said. But our world has become uninhabitable. Now the great worm's many eyes watered. We've been searching the galaxy near and far. Earth is the only planet with a dirt composition similar to Burrow. I sensed the worm's sincerity and lowered my plank. Oh, but oh, our race has been dying in the voids of outer space for decades, the worm added, weeping. Without a home, without dirt to dig and prosper. Here it had to pause while a sobbing fit overcame it. Now we, too, are the last of our kind. All others have perished from a lack of dirt. The great worm squirmed in agony. You earthlings don't use your underground space much, always expanding up rather than down. Here, the worm ceased, its great body contorting in torment as it sobbed. What a touching moment. The other worm continued. We offered your government a deal to tunnel and in return earn the right to live on your planet deep underground. It's easy for us. We eat dirt and poop tracks. I looked at them sideways. Some worms make silk. We make tracks, it explained. You earthlings wouldn't have noticed us living below, ever. Oh, but then your mayor changed his tune. They wanted us to build missile tubes. The mayor? I tried to remember how a city's mayor and the military were connected. Oh, yes. The generals wanted us to tunnel for hidden weapons, but that's against our ethos. I nodded and quietly Googled the word ethos. Why then are you still here? I asked, somewhat suspicious. Oh, but oh, great calamity, the worm said, and fell into another sobbing fit. Our ship's hyperdrive vanished. Without it, we cannot launch. You have no spare? I asked. The lost part was the spare. It's an intelligent, object-oriented auxiliary element designed to autonomously move, repair, and replace, the worm explained while sobbing up a lot more slime. When we weren't looking, it ran off. Oh, they are inquisitive bits of tech, the smaller worm said. Perhaps attaching itself to another vehicle by mistake. It then pondered. You humans build lots of broken crafts, you know? Although the slimy worm just had to throw that in, I couldn't help but feel sorry for the old monsters. Well, what does it look like? I asked. Circular, with thin protrusions all around, said the worm, forming a loop with its tendrils. It glows in the dark. Yeah, said I. Oh, if we had that part, we'd leave your planet immediately. We'd also return power to all tunnels and all trains, as we would no longer need to hide down here," the other worm added. I pulled the alien tech from my backpack. "How about this thing?" The worms rolled over backward. "Where in the earth did you," said one, clutching its tendrils. "By the soils of Marcon," exclaimed the other, convulsing. "What do you want for it, earthly?" The worm bit its tongues and then continued. "Spaceman, what's your price?" I shrugged. "I don't need anything. I enjoy helping my fellow space dwellers." Suddenly, we were interrupted when all the holes around the room's walls and ceiling began to spout brown liquid, and a rancid smell filled the room. The worms wiggled and squirmed. "Oh, oh, what befouls us now?" It dawned on me quickly. "They're filling this place with sewage." "Oh, quick, we must escape," said the big worm. "Release the implement," pleaded the other. I held it forward, about to open my hand, and ceased. "But what about me?" "Oh, we will help you escape to the surface." I nodded. Time had run out, and without much contemplation, I released the mechanical spider squid. Should I have been negotiating harder? Perhaps, but those great smiles or grins on the worms' faces were priceless. The implement, meanwhile, ran to the room's center, spun a few times, and then speedily crawled all over the spaceship, scanning the structure to finally lodge itself into a gap that kind of matched its form. "Is that it?" I asked. Oh, yes." By now, the sewage had reached my ankles. "How do I get out of here?" I asked, climbing up a workbench. "Oh, you'll be taking the brown line," said the big worm. It glided to a wall nook and opened a hidden door. Behind it lay a man-sized vertical tube. "Quick, enter our escape pod. It will transport you inside the happy hypertubes to the surface." The alien operated another mechanism, and the inside of the tube revealed a bullet-like craft. "Enter, friend." Fully trusting the worms, I stepped into the windowless metallic slug. The friendly worms raised their tendrils in goodbye. "Bite the dust, hoch man." The expression, biting or eating dust on planet Burrow, means wishing great prosperity. I gestured digging with my hands and nodded before shooting up and away through streams of muck. I shot through the subterranean tubes with fantastic speed. What an incredible fortune to have these wonderful pipes and a working subway system after all. Within mere seconds of travel, I perceived light ahead and after no time at all, shot out into the brown sun. Still inside the tube, I glided high above the ground and gained a beautiful view of the area. Not far off lay the station, the delegation, and the bus. A crowd had filled the bleachers, and the mayor stood on stage by the same giant valve I had operated earlier, theatrically turning its wheel and activating the drainage. The happy hypertubes above drained visibly. Suddenly, my travel tube curled downward and sloped toward the crowd. I closed in. I must have made a noisy spectacle as I could see the audience gawk and point in my direction. The mayor, too focused on his speech, did not notice my craft. For an instant, I vanished behind a building, and the tube's slope changed once more to bring me low over the ground and toward the assembly. When I felt my speed slowing due to the compression of matter ahead, I knew that I was closing in on a dead end. The end of the line. And that's why I'm delighted to drain the happy hypertubes so that the city's beauty may be restored, exclaimed the mayor. Just then, my vessel broke through the tube's terminating peg, and I popped right into the crowd with a magnificent toot. I wasted no time and dashed from the capsule. "Worms! Tunnels! Blockage! Spaceship!" I yelled, perhaps a bit too fast. The audience's puzzled stares showed. "The subway works!" I leapt to the valve and turned it off. Now the mayor stepped toward me, shooting my suppository craft a disapproving glance. "What are you talking about, bus driver?" he asked grimly. The man clearly wasn't pleased by my enthusiastic announcement. "Did you meet those slugs? What did they tell you?" "They're not slugs," I said, correcting. "They're worms." "They're certainly not," the mayor said, raising his eyebrows very far. "They are slithering slugs from planet Slugga 69 here." He presented me the worm's immigration cards, indeed showing stamps from Slugga. I remained skeptical. "The worms told me all about your corruption, Mr. Mayor." At this, the mayor laughed. "Corruption, ha!" He slapped his meaty head. "Did you ask those slugs why they're still here?" I nodded. "Their ship broke and missed a vital part, until now." "Hogwash!" bellowed the mayor. "After uncovering their scheme, we ordered their departure, but the slugs refused, instead vanishing into the underground and disabling the subway out of spite." I shook my head. "But they're the last of their kind." "Police!" the mayor shouted, snorting. "They've pulled that scam on 13 worlds. They're con artists. Didn't you see how slimy they are? Silent invaders, the worst kind." Suddenly, the mayor stopped and contemplated. "Why did you say until now?" "I helped them fix their ship," I exclaimed happily, "so that they may return to space and continue their journey." "You did what?" The mayor turned as red as a dying sun. "Their ship is not a ship at all, you fool!" Panic built in his eyes. "It's a drill!" I waved this ridiculous notion aside. "Drill? Bah!" Just then, the ground began to shake, and the silver tower behind us started to move. Down. "They'll burrow all the way to Earth's core! We're doomed!" I swallowed hard as the ground trembled, shook, and vibrated at varying frequencies, allowing me to experience the fruits of my mistake in so many ways. "Ah, crap," was all I could utter as the enormous alien drill went to work. "These slugs were never keen on building our tunnels," the mayor said as he collected his stuff to flee. "They wanted to turn our planet into a lava-spreading wasteland, steal minerals, and have loud get-togethers." I saw the truth. The aliens were about to turn Earth into a porous party planet, and I had enabled it. I watched in terror as the great drill ate into the ground. "We must call the military," I shrieked in panic. "The slugs will be halfway to the core before peace enforcement arrives," the mayor shouted from afar as he got into his limousine. "And we don't have weapons for ground penetration." I swallowed hard, but the saliva vibrated back up my throat. "And what happens when they reach the core?" I asked, but the mayor had rolled up his windows. I had never liked Terra very much, but I hardly detested it so passionately as to see it destroyed. What was I to tell my wife during our weekly check-in? The vibration, meanwhile, had settled into a rhythmic, cyclical shaking, supported by a full-bodied grinding sound. Tons of rock and dirt discharged from the hole where the silver tower had once been. I uttered a desperate cry of disbelief. "No!" Under thunder. Was Terra doomed? Just before the drill had completely submerged, it sputtered. Had it hit dolerite? Surely a drill designed to melt through miles of diamond could handle some rock. Smoke and sparks now shot up, and the machine began to wobble, as if by a great internal malfunction. Its sounds changed from the dull grinding of rock to the shredding of metal. Then, without warning, an internal blast shook the drill and it shot from the ground, 50 meters up into the air, to crash and shatter with two great limp slugs hanging out of its cockpit. The crowd first stared at me and then at the smoking heap of slug scrap. I needed a distraction. "Over there!" I shouted and pointed, but everyone was already glancing over there. Suddenly a hand gripped my shoulder hard. The mayor stood behind me, looking serious. "Your acts had grave consequences," he said, nodding toward the smoking alien mess. Suddenly his face lightened. "For the slugs!" He hugged and kissed me. "You failed to mention that you sabotaged the drill, you clever ox." I nodded, grinned, and shrugged. He thrust up my arm and shouted, "Hail our hero! Hail!" It became clear, figuratively as everything was spattered with sewage, that the drill was somehow destroyed forever. The mayor showered me with praise. "You freed our subway line, solved the sewer crisis, and defeated the alien invaders." I laughed dumbly and nodded. But what had caused this calamitous series of events? My question was soon answered as the boy who first gave me the alien implement walked up, followed by an old man. "Sir," the boy said, "I wanted my grandpa to meet our bus driver and hero." I shook their hands. "Oh, you're the guy from the junkyard," I then said, remembering the boy's story. "The very one," said Gramps. "Do you often find alien technology around your place?" "Never. Only old pinball junk." "Mysterious. The device you're referring to," said Gramps, "does it run around erratically? Jump? Glows in the dark?" Yes, that's it exactly. So you do know about this alien tech. Where did it come from? I asked. Here, the old man nodded knowingly. It's an old cat toy, he then said. Gave old Whiskers a hell of a chase, he continued, smirking. Never ran out of steam either, with its fusion reactor and all that. The blinking light at its center was Kitty's favorite, though. I shook my head in disbelief. But why was it in the ground? Oh, that! We used to bury all old trash in the backyard, you know? I knew, and there it was. But how had it made the bus go faster? Just then, a mechanic joined us. An obstruction. The old bus has mechanical wires for the throttle, here. He held up a gummed-up metal cable that was gunked by 1,000 discarded gums and gummy bears. I nodded and plodded back to the bus. As I had surmised, the vehicle was firmly lodged into the front of the station. My bus, my office, and my home were wrecked beyond repair. I was out of a job once again, but not out of luck. "What are you going to do now without work and home?" asked an overly frank student. "Dunno, son." I became a hero and an overnight cyberweb sensation, hailed as a hero who had not only single-handedly thwarted an alien conspiracy, but also restored much-needed public transportation and the city's sewer system. For this, I was granted a lifetime transportation pass first class and an unlimited sewage certificate, resting assured that I would never have to worry about public transportation or sewage again. We drained the hypertubes into the slug hole. By now, the tubes had drained into the slug's hole. They weren't fully aired out, but no one wanted to wait. We all rushed into our swimsuits and had a great, fun-filled tubey day. And that concludes my final transportation adventure. By the way, I was surprised to hear that you knew nothing about my experience at the hospital or my hanging out with the Troposphere gang. The messages got lost, I guess. I've asked the computer to identify the problem, but it only confirmed that all the messages were sent and received. I'm at a loss here, but I sure hope that you get this latest message. End of transcription.
That last paragraph has me perplexed, but it is inconsequential now. I'm beyond the reach of any government, sailing the high seas, fully equipped for experimentation and survival, serving all of Earth's inhabitants today and in the ahead. My landlocked belongings were sold to purchase the classic, cutter-rigged 12-meter sail yacht I'm writing you from. I had it hauled and refurbished to meet my electrical needs, including 0000 gauge wiring throughout. I installed 2 extra receivers high on the mast and connected them to the 75 batteries that replace the ballast by the keel. The extra weight does make the old tub sluggish, but it adds stability as well, a feature I will need in the storms. Also, I'm not trying to win any races. The seas are getting choppy. My weather radar indicates a level 3 squall 10 nanometers ahead with strong electrical activity. I'm sailing straight for it. If my calculations are correct, and they always are, it will fully energize the crystal as well as myself.
You heard The Underground from the series Notes from the Ahead by Oliver Arnold, performed by Adam 11 Lubs.